to begin with, you know, like
Yeah.
it's not, it's going right now. It's setting up.
Yeah.
As soon as the link goes, it's going.
Yeah. So we on. Yeah. What's up, everybody? How y'all doing today?
Start off, Mike, because I'm trying to get it back.
Trying to get some kinks worked out on the live stream, but appreciate y'all joining us. We got a show chock full of interesting topics to talk about, especially in regards in the world of sports and politics and how they intertwine. And of course, Redspin Sports always delivers the authentic working class perspective in regards to talking about sports. So this is, here's our second episode of 2021. So of course, 2020 was a crazy year. I think 2020 was a year that you saw an acceleration in a lot of conditions in our country, across the globe. COVID, Black rebellion, Trump getting, losing the election, which was, in my opinion, a upset. You couldn't have told me at the start of the year that would happen, but it happened. So you saw a intense politicization, if that's the right way to say that word, in regards to how sports and politics mixed, especially this year. In 2020, last year, you had college football players coming together, demanding more rights, trying to unionize, using COVID being that accelerant point to advance that struggle in a way that COVID, I guess, advanced and accelerated a lot of struggles that was happening. So, I mean, that brings us to 2021. And of course, we would not be remiss if we didn't really kind of delve into the different kind of topics that have been happening. We're going to try to wait to see if we can get Justin in so we can get started.
I think, you can just keep rolling with the monologue for now, though, my man, as we keep just 5 minutes. All right. And then
I'll start.
All right. All I'm doing is just getting the new link out to the people. All right. Like, because we had, obviously the first link that we were tweeting out there, was, just we had issues with it. All right. So
we got people watching, so we're good.
No, we're good. Yeah. I know. I'm just making sure to get this out on Twitter and update my Facebook posts and all that. So, look, people want to hear from you, Mike.
Yeah.
Let the people know what's on your mind.
Some of my monologue. All right, we're doing a monologue. Let's talk about the Rooney Rule. So I don't know if folks have heard. The Rooney Rule is a sort of a rule that was pushed forth by the Steelers owner, I believe his name is Art Rooney, in which every NFL team, if they have a opening head coach position or front office position now, and apparently this year they've expanded it to the coordinators, you have to at least interview a minority candidate. So the NFL has been pretty bad. You got 32 head coaching jobs. And I believe right now you currently only have, now you have 3 African-American owners. Anthony Lynn, of course, with the Los Angeles Chargers, was recently just fired. So he was a minority owner or Black owner.
Black coach.
Coach, yeah.
Coach. Sorry.
Same.
Now with the Detroit Lions.
Now with the Detroit Lions as the offensive coordinator, you still have Mike Tomlin, longtime head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But who am I missing? Like, those are the 2.
Well, the other one, you got Brian Flores. You got Brian Flores in Miami.
Brian Flores, of course, Miami Dolphins, and then of course you just recently had David Culley, who was hired as the head coach of the Houston Texans. I mean, I think that's in itself
slap in the face.
Whole episode of Houston Texans.
Houston Texans are a real right-wing organization. Don't forget about the Bob McNair, his son now, Cal McNair, and they used to actually drug test for marijuana on top of the NFL's drug testing.
Wow.
That's how reactionary these little shit bags are. And the reality is Deshaun Watson want to get out of there, that's power, and we should all, anybody doesn't support that out of their mind, and at least if you believe in solidarity and recognize that for better or for worse, the most visible site of labor stripe that's covered in any kind of corporate media happens to be these CBA negotiations and, you know, battles between management and players that are like, you know, putting literally their bodies and minds and everything on the line, as we saw, you know, with Mahomes last week. You know, he certainly looked like, I guess he just, what is it, Mike? We always used to say, get your bell rung, right? As the way they would, euphemism for you got a concussion and you just gotta go tough it out, right? So anyways, yeah, keep rolling.
No, I mean, and I think that's a natural topic that kind of flows into what we were talking about with the Rooney Rule. So of course you have the kind of the right wing kind of reaction to it, which is kind of which calls it like kind of a tokenism of sorts. Like, you know, we need to interview the best. You need to hire the best candidate. You know, hire the best candidate. You know, you got a league that's what is around 80% African American. And for some reason, the best candidate always tends to be white, you know, which, you know, I think shows kind of the biases of the ownership. You have to look at the NFL ownership. You know, this is the 1%. You know, these are all mostly rich white dudes who own these franchises. So of course, they're not hiring African American head coaches or minority head coaches to the same extent. Now, Robert Saleh, he was recently hired this offseason as the head coach of the New York Jets. First Muslim head coach to be hired, which is like an accomplishment in itself. But you know, a lot of the stuff with the Rooney Rule, a lot of these franchises are only paying lip service to it, and especially when you have a situation when we go to the Houston Texans, like Nate was saying, quarterback Deshaun Watson, all pro. He had the most passing yards in the NFL this year. Of course, my Jaguars passed on him to get Leonard Fournette. You know,
that's right. They also passed on Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, Leonard's in the Super Bowl. Congrats to Leonard Fournette in the Super Bowl. So,
this is one of I'll show you this. Civil rights activist Leonard Fournette. You know, he had a Black Lives Matter rally. You know, with the players. You know, the mayor and the sheriff also attended, but whatever. You know, it's a start, but you know, this is the first, like the Houston Texans, you know, dropped the ball with Deshaun Watson, like on a, you know, like when Nate was saying, when the original Colin Kaepernick protest was happening, it was Bob McNair, Texans owner, who said we can't let the inmates run the asylum. You know, essentially, no, not essentially. Comparing his players to prisoners or to subjects, you know, his property. You know what I'm saying? We can't let the inmates run the asylum. So of course
he didn't, and he's so bourgeois, just in his world of just bourgeois being an oil man, right? He doesn't even think that's like, you know, in his mind, he's just like, oh, I'm just, you know, it's just a, you know, metaphor.
Just talking.
Just talking. It's just an expression, you know. It's not
all those literal. Texas. I mean, all these franchises are right wing. You know, it's like started by like 1%ers, but especially the Texans, man. Like that whole logo.
Houston oil money, yeah, glorifying. Let's talk about that, because what Texas Houston nationalism, Oilers. All right. Houston Oilers so now are the Tennessee Titans, and actually the first year as the Tennessee Titans, they broke my little, you know, 13-year-old heart there in Jacksonville, Florida, sitting in the stands of the AFC Championship game. You know, looking at us having the lead there, 14-10 going into halftime, 14-2 season. But nonetheless, back to Texas nationalism. I mean, you got like a glorification of people like the Alamo, for like settler colonialism out there, people that wanted to have this Republic of Texas before they ever, you know, even entered the Union. It was just a slaver republic. It was like a, you know, a harbinger of the Confederacy. And nonetheless, it's like, we Texas, all that Texas, you know, sort of pride. Sam Houston, the city Houston Texans are named after. You know, messed up history, man. Stephen F. Austin. People need to research these people, because otherwise you're not going to fully appreciate like the genocide of what this what settler colonialism is and how it's connected to slavery and all that. So yeah, and the Houston Texans now being a modern manifestation of that, glorifying that, glorifying that.
Think about it. Jerry Jones and Carl McNair both got money in oil, correct?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Dallas Cowboys. Absolutely. They had this whole Texas, the Texans, the Cowboy hat, like it just spits erasure of indigenous people, but and outright racism. But of course, Carl McNair, Bob McNair passes away. I believe he passed away last year. So you know, and his son takes over, Carl McNair. So of course he kind of elevates, what's his name, Jack Easterby.
There we go. Now you got Justin in now. Good, good, good.
Justin.
All right, all right, all right, all right. So we finally got our new member of the Redspin Sports fam in here.
I had to switch laptops.
Right.
It makes no sense.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're on there. So we're talking about Texas nationalism in relation to the Houston Texans and how it ties into the Deshaun Watson stuff now. So it's kind of discursive a little bit here. But like, go ahead, Mike.
Jack Easterby, who was who basically there's a good article out there. I will post in a live chat in regards to his influence with the Houston Texans. So, you know, he started off as like a life coach with the New England Patriots, deeply religious, and now he's a front office executive with the Houston Texans, basically calling the shots. You know, because of his influence, you had Andre Johnson, who's a all-pro wide receiver, retired for the Houston Texans, who never says anything. He tweets that this guy, Jack Easterby, is the reason why, you know, he's no good for the organization. Deshaun Watson wants to get out of town, and there's this whole debate. Of course, it always happens when an NFL player or any athlete wants to control what they do and want to go to a different team or different market to do whatever, you know, for various reasons. He just got paid a mega contract. He needs to stick it out, and he's getting paid. Shut up and blah blah. Let the owners own. I mean,
right. That's what it's a
world now.
That's what this is about. I mean, it's literally about nothing more than, you know, owners like wanting to make, like, pushing back against the kind of player empowerment that we've seen at the NBA, in the NBA, and that you see now the NBA players being able to force trades and all. And if you're a fan, you hear this, and I get like an initial impulse some fans have of being like, these guys make all this money and stuff, and like, you know, to some level, I get where it comes from, but it's just wrong, because the reality is, there's no like quaint kind of like loyalty. This isn't your hometown like high school football team in a small town where like all the people like come together, at least, like, you know, and there's like and even in those dynamics there's messed up stuff, you know, as it relates to that. But there's still a lot more. It's much more of an actual community based on a real community, not this imagined community that's manufactured for mass production. And this Easterby guy, I put that in the chat that y'all want to check that out. This guy's a self-help like guru, author, you know, snake oil salesman, right?
Call him the wizard.
Yeah, the wizard. He's gonna get your life right. He's gonna fix your problems, right? So Deshaun Watson's just not really feeling his whole kind of like, you know, therapy for what's gonna get you, you know, how you gonna restore the soul, right? So Bill O'Brien had a bizarre relationship, you know, the way he managed that team, trading away DeAndre Hopkins, just inexplicably, really, for, you know, guys like David Johnson. Watch the running back. We know running backs don't last that long anyway. So this is just an organization that I think right now paints a perfect illustration of what the NFL is at large in terms of like its ownership structure. Not to mention that we even use terms in society anymore like owners and landlords, and the fact that that's just normalized language is a whole another thing. But Deshaun Watson is flexing his muscle. And I don't care what the Texans say. If you're not going to play and you're going to put your foot down, they're going to reach a breaking point where eventually they're going to deal him. I mean, all these other teams say like, we're not going to deal until they do, right? So Watson just needs to play the long game, I feel like, stand his ground with this, because this organization just spat in his face. I mean, he talked about Robert Saleh. He talked about, you know, wanting to have Eric Bieniemy, who, I mean, look, I'm not an expert enough on like different allegations from his past. I mean, I know that there's a whole lot of things that are excused from people's past, and white coaches, and Bieniemy as an exceptional, like, or, you know, organizer of people, and getting people on this, you know, the same page to believe in a common vision, to articulate that.
Well, that circles us back to the Rooney Rule, and then with the Houston Texans. I mean, we would be remiss if like we don't think that has any.
Quickly, Eric Bieniemy is the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. For those of you who don't know, he's you know, works with Patrick Mahomes and under Andy Reid.
So that brings it back to the Rooney Rule, you know, and how we'd be remiss if we didn't think that didn't have any influence on Deshaun Watson's, like the Houston Texans essentially telling him that they want him to help out with the hiring process, and he wants to talk to Eric Bieniemy, and they of course decide not to talk to him until Deshaun Watson goes to the media and upset. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
then of course they hired. I mean, you know, they hired David Culley, who I really just, to be honest, never heard of before.
Yeah, no, I haven't either.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking like Joe Cullen, maybe like old D-line coach who in Jacksonville, who's with Baltimore now, and then you know, might be coming back with Urban Meyer. But like, yeah, this dude, I mean, it's like they're clearly trying to make it known that, like, you know, to be real about it, that Houston, that this is like a plantation like organization where we make the rules top down, right? And like, we're not, you know, you're going to be paid handsomely, right? You know, you'll be able to have like a nice lifestyle, have these different things, you know, whatever, but it doesn't mean you have any power. You know, it doesn't mean you have power over, like, you know, how your labor is used, like how the decisions are made that affect you and your body, and all that kind of stuff. They want to make it clear that they are not the NBA, that this is like going to be a different, it's going to be run differently. And even if they have to lose games, you know, fans be damned, you know. That's what's happening, man. That's what's like pushed. It's just so funny because it could have been so easily prevented, you know, but they had to make this case though. And again, it brings you. So I don't know, Justin, what's your take on this?
I mean, and how far away are we from, you know, the inmates running the prison line?
Oh,
you
not
know,
that far.
I mean, exactly. You know,
come on,
I mean,
it's just you know what he meant, man. It's just it's an expression, you know.
It's just an expression. I didn't mean anything, you know, awful
nothing
about
subliminally there whatsoever going on, right?
You know, and you know, I think for a lot of people, the Rooney Rule just reads as it's a mandatory step they have to take, but they don't heed anything from it. Most organizations don't. It doesn't remove GMs from their prejudice. It doesn't remove owners from their prejudice. It does nothing. It's toothless in all kinds of ways to try to actually implement something out of it. It's just we interviewed a quota we need to interview and just move on.
It's also patronizing. It's offensive.
Yeah.
You know, like Raheem Morris, like flying in for interviews. He's like got no chance to get, you know, it's like become like a joke now, basically, like the whole, like, I'm like, God, I mean, you hear black coaches talk about it. They feel like they're just like, oh, here's my like token, I'm the black guy interview sort of thing. That's become like a thing. So as long as you have a capitalist system in place where you got, you know, a billionaire class of people, the same people that are running hedge funds, that are angle drilling and Occupy Palestine, as Mike pointed out when we were talking to Max this summer with our NFL and Israel episode, like Stephen Ross from the Miami Dolphins does. Like, you're going to have people that are just going to be ghouls, man. And that's what these people are. They are what they are. Their existence is built on exploitation. But it's also built on maintaining a facade of respectability, a veneer of respectability, right? And we're seeing that with, like, and so for those of you who don't know, what he's referring to is Bob McNair, the late Houston Texans owner, father of current owner Cal McNair, who talked about with the Colin Kaepernick stuff before his passing, you know, that you know, we can't let the inmates run the asylum.
I know that probably came up. I missed that part of there, so that's why I was asking if it got mentioned earlier. So,
well, Justin, why don't you pick up real quick on what you saw in the Detroit Free Press in your home state of Michigan, and what that says about just a larger mentality about, you know, anger from the columnist at Matthew Stafford as opposed to the Ford family.
Yeah, so this guy wrote 977 words, just absolutely blasting what Matthew Stafford did, but only for one reason. He even goes on, he says here that I advocate for trading Stafford. Like, I am a huge advocate of trading this man. It's the way he did it, because the team should announce that, and the team.
I always love it, the way he did it. It's always the way he did it, right?
Yeah.
We don't have just the way he did it, man.
Because for him to say this, therefore the Lions don't get the max because they know he wants out. Other teams know he wants out, so they're going to try to, you know, cut a little bit lower on the. But there is no second side of this coin in these 977 words. That's why it like struck me as just humorous, because it's. Throughout.
Talk about how it shows the sports media complex and what journalism, who they work for, who their masters are.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's appeasing that ownership, and you know, like, you know, as someone, I'm not a Lions fan, obviously the hat. I spent, you know, my formidable adult years in Seattle, so I spent my kid years in Michigan. But you know, knowing what those fans, you know, go through. That's ownership that's never cared. They care about Ford on the side of the building. They care about Ford on the field. They care about the advertising, the prestige that brings of owning it. They don't care about winning. They've squandered every single great like talent they've had. I mean, their two best offensive players of all time both retired by what, 30?
After 9
Just
years
to
for
get
Barry
out.
Sanders and 8 years for Calvin Johnson.
You know, it's
not Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson hated playing for the Lions so much they retired before reaching 10 years in the league.
Yeah, it's just, you know, so for somebody to sit here and write this article about how, you know, I agree he should be traded, but it's his fault. He's doing this wrong.
Let's talk, but Justin,
not the owner.
Why do they do it though? It's because they want access, right?
Yeah,
it's pay for play, right? I mean, Mike, maybe
Yep.
you can talk from a Jacksonville perspective. I mean, on like how the media ecosystem works down there to sort of just like, you know, 1010XL, the big station that has the radio rights for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, they're like a team propaganda arm in a lot of ways, with the exception of like, you know, our friend of the show, James Big Game James Coleman from former Florida State fullback, and you know, just a guy who used to train me actually, but you know, he will. I mean, he'll point. And there's more people being critical, but you get that. Like, you get controlled like media these teams use. Like, maybe you could talk to like how it works in Jacksonville, Mike.
I mean, you basically explained it. You
know? All right. Yeah. I mean,
you basically explained it.
Good point. All right. I guess it's pretty simple, you know. But
not a lot of opposition media. I mean, unlike in other markets, you know, where you have a lot more, I guess, competition.
Philly and New York.
Philly and New York, you have a lot more controversy. And the fact, that's still wild to me how Doug Peterson wins the Super Bowl 3 years ago and gets fired, you know?
Yeah, it's wild. But like, what's wilder is the dumbass decisions he's made as head coach this year, with like messing up like so many things. And it brings the question of whether Frank Reich, his offensive coordinator that year, was actually a bigger, you know, impact on some of those things. I don't know. He did. I mean, the guy, it was just kind of fell apart. But you also look at like, you know, the way people are covered. Let's talk about like the evolution of the black quarterback. You talk about Philly, Randall Cunningham. I always remember my dad talking about just like being in Philly on a business trip one time, just like the sports radio just being nothing but like the most just brutal, disgusting type calls, you know, about like Randall Cunningham's inability to play quarterback, and all just beating around the bush, which they're obviously saying like, this black guy is not very smart, shouldn't, you know, sort of thing. And you know, and it's the same. Yeah, go ahead.
Who's like Jalen Ramsey's Deshaun Watson on a posted a criticism on his Twitter. It talked about how, you know, you had the ESPN draft analyst Todd McShay talked about how, you know, in this talk of, you know, Jets quarterback Sam Darnold, him being, you know, Deshaun Watson only being marginally better, and how Justin Fields, what's the guy's name, Zach Wilson, quarterback from BYU, and incoming, you know, probably top 3 pick, how he's light years ahead of Justin Fields, you know.
So where do you think that? Well, I mean, what if he? I mean, you think that's pretty?
Like a prejudicial racist lens on how people view the black quarterback as
right. When the irony is, man, Justin Fields is like ultra hyper intelligent
out of high school,
but he's exactly he's been trained like to play the quarterback position at a high level. He's been studying this stuff, man. Like it's really wild.
And he literally beat Trevor in the college playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, it's
no interceptions.
David Mulligetta, and like he represents like you know, look up his story, his background. It's interesting. I mean, he's, you know, definitely got a niche there with
he represents
a lot of young superstars in the league right now that are trying to change the power dynamics. So it's interesting. I'm not sitting here to blow smoke up an agent, but it's you know, there's definitely the levels on that hierarchy for sure. Anyways, man, so we talked about the Deshaun Watson thing. I mean, I'm going to predict that he will end up getting traded. I mean, when ultimately it comes down to it, they're going to posture. But you know, the New York Jets, and where I'm sitting now, 4 miles away from home of the New York Giants and New York Jets in MetLife Stadium. They are, I think, going to be willing to offer 3 first-round picks, and I think ultimately that will, you know, when you get down the draft, and they got the draft capital back from Jamal Adams last year going to Seattle, and I think that Deshaun Watson will end up with Gang Green and play here in North Jersey for the New York Jets. So, anyways, let's move on real quick. I was just wanting to get into some stuff here. There's a story I saw. I was wondering if y'all like heard this, but like to the National Women's Hockey League, and then Barstool Sports, they'll Dave Portnoy. All right, maybe Justin, you can hop in first of all. Just sort of tell me what your give the people a little background on Barstool if you don't mind, and then we'll like I'll transition it into what's going on with this story.
Yeah, Barstool. I mean, just the poster child of a toxic workplace. Yeah. So, I mean, when did Barstool even start? Like, I'm trying to think like how long this goes back. But I mean, since its inception, the amount of people former employees that come out of there talking about the women that come out of there talking about sexual harassment, talking about the toxic culture that they work with. Their owners just had this defiant attitude this whole time. It's like, you know, that he just carries like that uncancelable, you know,
Didn't like a year and a half ago he was openly like if you want to start a union here,
I'll fire you. Yeah,
we will fire you.
Yeah.
And
He
exchanged tweets with AOC and
he is a like walking proof that how the right wing cries about cancel culture is BS, because this dude openly has just straight up refused to have any kind of accountability for all of this toxic workplace stuff, all the sexual misconduct, sexual harassment. But like I said, he just tweets, flat out tweets, like, if you unionize, you'll all be fired.
Is he like a Proud Boy or something too?
Yeah, he's got affiliation with that. I mean,
he's got
Gavin
McInnes,
pictures, I think.
Yeah, he's got some pictures with him. I thought he had a picture with that other kid that actually did get canceled. The kid that goes around just doing fake videos.
I don't know if y'all noticed this, where he went on a big rant about a year ago about, I'm uncancelable. No one can cancel me. You can't cancel me, man. And like that was his whole thing. So like he just like rubbing it in the face like this. But then at the same time, Mike, maybe you can speak to this, like how like fascist minded people always act aggrieved. You know what I mean? It's like they're being oppressed and stuff. They got to like invert reality, and how like what we're seeing from the right, Proud Boys, these militia types, these people that storm the Capitol. Do you think there's some of it like it's the fair comparison I'm making to like sort of like the fascist ideology and mentality to think that where you're actually part of a structure that's oppressing people, but you're not used to having this, maybe the privileges, the economy's getting worse, so therefore you are somehow a victim just because other people are starting to fight for their liberation?
Well, I think in traditional kind of Marxist terms, fascism is always found as kind of an ideology kind of sparked off by like kind of the petty bourgeoisie, or like that kind of upper middle class sector, not necessarily the big bourgeoisie, the big 1%, but like that, like Trump's base, which was essentially small business owners, making over $100,000, who essentially claimed that government regulation was oppressing them, and how these immigrants, all these laws and stuff, these unions, it's fucking up our profits. So that's kind of historically where fascism has found its home base and its origins. And I mean, that's what makes all this GameStop like shit very fascinating, in the sense that the people who, how Tucker Carlson and David Portnoy and all these fuckers are trying to be the face of this fight against the elite, because they're saying that, we're these elite tech, and which is true, but this elite tech is working with the elite media, which is working with the elite globalists,
Illuminati,
to put Black Lives Matter in football and take away Christmas. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we're on Christmas.
So it's like that's the home base of it. So that feeling of being aggrieved, I'm sure, in the sense of them feeling like they can dominate the world or dominate the market or so. I mean, in a capitalist sense, I'm sure they do feel like, they're being oppressed from, ruling over everybody.
by Mitch McConnell. They wanted
by Mitch
Capitol,
McConnell.
man.
Yeah,
you remember
like,
that? But I told you, I hit you up about the Capitol, Mike, and I showed you that lady that was talking about defund everyone.
Yeah, defund the police.
Defund everyone.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yo, if you defund everyone though, like how you gonna like pay the cops you like paying to like go and oppress Black people and other minorities and kick people out the undocumented people out the country? Where's the money gonna? They're just like, What do you mean it's all? I mean, they obviously don't. What do you know? I mean, I don't know. What else can you say?
Yeah.
I mean,
kind of. So there's that freshman Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's essentially like a QAnon, like far right activist who somehow fucking got elected. Dalton, Georgia. It's not surprising where she got elected from, but think about all these. Like, think about the class of people that they represent. Like. People who used to own a livestock store that was booming 20 years ago, that the city, think about like Atlanta's taking their business, it's a new highway built, they're pissed off, and Trump has told them that, like he's king. And
what about the Chinese, right? The Chinese,
and whose fault
Chinese
it
workers.
is, they're always quick to tell you.
Man, that Q shit is freaky.
Wow.
That shit is freaky. So, but like even that, like, what's the base of that? It usually is this kind of middle petty bourgeois, far right, evangelical kind of leaning folks who believe that shit. And
My Pillow guy.
The My Pillow guy.
I mean,
who actually Dan Hicken does a spot for in 1010XL. But that's
Never mind you. But what about the lady on the QAnon? And what about the fact there's a lot of wealthy white women are a huge part of the makeup of it? Actually, there's a story in like the New Yorker about this lady, rich lady in the Upper East Side, is like grown up in like what privilege and wealth, who's this huge QAnon person. They're like, what's going to happen? I haven't heard what happened. This was right before Trump left office, but
so look at it. Like even this woman. So I give you an example. Like, and it's just, I always look at it like the class these people come from. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's a Republican Congresswoman, QAnon supporter. Believe that it maybe maybe it's more intricate than this, but believe that a Jewish space laser was causing the California fires. I liked.
Yeah. Yep,
no, you know what that reminded me of? That Austin Powers film.
Yeah.
We talked about the laser. I've turned the moon into a Death Star. So she believed that there was a Jewish Death Star that was trying to destroy California wildfire. She called Sandy Hook and stuff like a false flag. She's in Congress now.
Yo, Mike, you see her chase after the Parkland kid? MSNBC's all freaking out about that because she's become a
she's going up to like Ilhan Omar, who's swearing in the Congress on a Quran. She's going up to her with a Bible. Like, she's like a fucking one of those right-wing gotcha activist camera people. Yeah. That's her in Congress. What's her day job? She owns a construction company in Georgia,
There you go.
These people aren't like workers with regular 9 to 5. They own stuff, and they want to make sure they keep it,
Right. And they're worried they're worried. Yeah, you're right. They're worried they're super profits, right? That they're not, that's been cut. And that they're like their rate of exploitation, right, is getting cut. But Mike, you see with her too, that Kevin McCarthy put her on the education subcommittee actually in the House. She's like that. Actually, And now you got Pelosi freaking out, like, oh my gosh, I'm so outraged. Like, you weren't outraged about all these other forces and stuff. Like, you weren't fighting for Medicare for all. You weren't fighting for things that could actually, I don't know. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. Even with that interview, when she's following that 17-year-old kid talking about she carries a concealed weapon permit, which is in DC. If you ever been to DC and a lot of these liberal cities, you can't have no guns.
No guns.
She's literally on camera breaking the law. Like, fucking get her or something. But these are the people like leading like a counter revolution insurrection, and I do think it's accurate to say what January 6th was, which was a counter revolution. I think that's a pretty accurate to put it. But she was part of leading that charge, and these people are in Congress now, and these people are the new fascists who David Portnoy and like Barstool, they market themselves to. The most disappointing thing of the year was Deion Sanders leaving NFL Network and taking a job with Barstool. I was
what about Willie Colon too, man? And Willie Colon, see, that's giving them cover. It's like the whole like, oh, I'm not racist, so I'm friends with her. I like Herman Cain. It reminds you like the old white granddads in the South that'll be like, oh, I'm not racist. I'm like, who are your friends? Who are all these black friends? They're like, they start mentioning their yard man and like, and it's like, so you're proving my point, jackass. Like, like, so Justin, what's your take, man?
I want to throw something in on the Q thing really fast because as we talked the last episode we recorded, like there's a couple podcasts I listened to of really good leftists that put in a lot of time on Q just to like so we don't have to give like truncated. And
somebody has to,
someone has to do that. And, Abby Martin, her brother, Robbie Martin, has done a lot of work on this. And I heard the two newest Q things. I just got to share them because you were talking about the lasers from space. So the two newest things circulating, because like the poster known as Q hasn't actually posted in like over a month, but no one has to post under that account anymore. This shit, I mean, come on.
Life of its own now, right?
Yeah. Like, so the two newest things circulating are, I don't know which one to say first because I don't know which one's like more absurd. So I'll go with this one first, is that Trump's actually still president and Biden's just a puppet doing what he says because they have all of the Hunter stuff. They have the Hunter laptop stuff, and therefore this administration is actually still the Trump administration. It's just Biden's the front for it, which actually is a real curious thing because I'm actually curious to see if like over the next year, if Q becomes a pro-Biden movement, which would be, but let's be honest, it's not that much of a stretch because he's a Republican.
You got some explaining to do, man. Go for it.
But number two is that Trump's actually the president because him and Biden actually did a face-off.
You ever seen Face Off?
Yeah.
Face.
Like literally, that's one of the ones circulating is that they literally did all the plastic surgery necessary to make Trump's body Biden's body size, and they just swapped him. So he's still that one I feel is almost like a troll inside the Q whole thing. But the one about the Hunters, they've got all this info on Hunter, so Biden's just agreeing to like be a puppet for. But like I said, it'd be wild if that actually leads to Q flipping and becoming pro-Trump, because ultimately I think it's going to be pro-state power no matter what. That movement doesn't survive if it just stays pro one guy. Like
it's interesting. I mean,
yeah.
At the end of the day, it's going to defend the American state, but it just depends on what that looks like. I mean, and I think it looks like, as long as to keep core values of maintaining capitalism and, making sure that working people don't get power. I mean, I think you will support whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, can I throw you a question? Like someone in the chat, Neil Singer, was saying that, like, talking about, I mean, in my opinion, Q was the intelligence community's fart, so it could happen or whatever. Like, to me, basically, is it? You think there's any relationship to like, any of these, but like, I mean, I think they're organic movements, but I think of people that are just.
Organic. I mean,
but I think the intelligence community, but exploited, maybe, right?
Yeah, Flynn swore an oath on Q. I mean. That's on film. Like he posted that online. So, I mean, they have like former members of that community. It's just, what power they actually have. I don't know.
The power may be limited. I mean, I think all that stuff varies. I mean, I think what you saw after January 6th was a clear, like, the plot didn't work. Everything turns Mitch McConnell turning on Trump. The House Speaker blaming Trump's rhetoric. I mean, that's stuff that they did not expect, and I think that's something that we didn't really expect, because we thought Trump's vice grip on the power structure was so powerful. But I mean, even in essence, I mean, he still has $100 million that he raised off of people donating to the Stupid Vote campaign. So he's a kingmaker at the end of the day, and he just opened up that office of the shadow president. What is it called? The office of the former president.
Office of the former president.
So I mean.
Just getting ready for 2024, man.
What was that question? I think I was on I did Nate's been on the past couple of weeks. I was on last week, Radical Misfits on Sputnik.
No, Political Misfits.
Political Misfits.
On Sputnik. And I go on Friday, every Friday on By Any Means Necessary with Jackie Luqman and Sean Blackman. But Mike was on with Michelle Whitty and Bob Schley-Huber. And what was that, Mike?
Yeah, we brought up the point in the question is, and the sister who was the co-host brought up a great question in regards to, do we think there's going to be a normalization with a Democrat in the White House? will players, you know, refuse to go to the White House still? Will they, you know, be as political about voting? I mean, my answer to that was I think a lot of stuff is irreversible. I do think when the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, they're gonna go to the White House. They're gonna go to the White House, you know, and meet with Joe Biden. You know, unlike previous years where they didn't want to meet with Trump. I mean, I think that stuff is gonna be normal, but I do think the deep politicization. God damn it, that fucking word today.
Politicization.
Of athletes in 2020 is irreversible. I mean, you can't go backwards. You know, that's why people are so pissed off about the $1,400, $2,000 checks because you gave them money last year, and once people realize what the government is capable of doing for them when there's a crisis, or what the power they can do, you can't come back from that. So while I think I think on the left especially, there's a lot of there's natural pessimism always to the Democratic administration, as there should be. I think you know, you should be very, you know, critical and, you know, organize independent mass movements and criticize openly. One thing that isn't, I'm not pessimistic about is the deep kind of, you know, class consciousness that was built among athletes last year, especially with COVID, you know, with the NBA players, you know, with the NBA strike, you know, with players doing different forms of protest, you know, and even using their platform to talk about stories that matter. Like, you know, Leonard Fournette talked about the Jordan Davis shooting when he was killed by racist Michael Dunn in Jacksonville over half a decade ago. You know, players wearing names of like people killed by the cops on their helmets. I mean, that shit matters to families, and it helps them a little in the struggle. It isn't a lot of, sometimes it's like, but there's also generally, like on the left, there's like an accelerationist appeal that if we aren't like revolution now, and if you aren't like revolution now, then you're selling out. You know what I'm saying? And I think you can't really view athletes who have never been politicized before, who had, you know how it is, Nate, the black athletes, even at Bowles High School, you know what I mean? You got people, you probably got, you know, or at these different football powerhouses, you probably got like white coaches and white boosters who don't really give a shit about their life outside of like them playing on the field. You know what I'm saying? Probably the main ones rallying against Black Lives Matter on Facebook and Twitter, but they love football players. So these athletes are treated differently. So they're built of through their hard labor, they create a pedestal for themselves. But of course, you know, these benefactors who are benefiting off, you know, these athletes' labor use that to propel themselves up and try to make these athletes into people who are like apolitical. Try to make them into Herschel Walker. You know, absolutely. Herschel Walker's son, or there's actually a Utah congressman, a black congressman.
Yeah, don't forget his name. I don't even care right now. The point is, we brought him out. The dude is just like Burgess is his last name. And Mr. Burgess is just like a former, you know, NFL player who's like, you know, business has been good to him, you know, being a right winger. J.C. Watts from Oklahoma being another one, you know, for years doing this kind of playing that game. You know, you can like, and you're going to be loved by like the white football, you know, community. You know, we always talked about how to playing ball, just how much cops love football, you know, and how much like the only time like you see power dynamics with cops, especially like I've seen in college football in the South, you know, when you see like state troopers on the sidelines, like security at like huge and 80,000-90,000 seat stadiums in like the SEC, or like a Clemson or Florida State or whatever, and then you have you got, you know, mostly black players on the field playing, and they're technically in that dynamic when they're wearing the uniform, when they're wearing that team's uniform, it's like they cease to be like the way they think of like them as a black male, like outside of that. And it's just a weird dynamic. It's like, and it's part of this, like, you know, hero worship type thing where like sport is gladiators, is modern day gladiator. It's absolutely tied up in that. And they're also, they want to live vicariously through them. You know, a lot of these guys, they're living out the dreams that they wish they had been talented enough to be able to experience growing up, being an Auburn fan in Alabama, or Clemson fan in South Carolina, and they want to, through them, it's like they're attaching themselves to their lived experience and gaining and extracting like meaning from that. And that's something that we need to like be mindful of and analyze.
I agree 100%. I agree 100% because especially as a Black athlete or as a press nationality athlete, I mean, you carry with you, into the, sports has a unifying effect, across all nationalities. In a lot of ways, I mean, the athletes usually come from the working class, but in the sense, when you're in a stadium or you're rooting for a team, all classes, whatever, popular front, whatever. But sports has that capacity. But when you have a capitalist economy in which something has to be privatized, something has to be owned, then of course there's an ownership factor into it, in which these athletes, these Black players, are bred from birth, bred from these high school camps. You go to the NFL Combine, Senior Bowl, they got you with your shirt off, butt naked, seeing how big your muscles are, seeing how fast, how big your calves are, how big what I mean? Like almost as if it's like a slave auction.
Well, it's muscle discourse. They get really excited talking about guys' calves too.
Bubble butt.
They'll be like, "Oh
Weird.
wow, just really
like,
thick thighs there." Yeah.
Well, it's weirder when it's high school kids, like at the combine, like the high school combines. That's
the rivals and Nike stuff. Yeah.
But it's a whole market. Think about even like high school recruiting. Who makes money off of that? Like, who owns the high school recruiting site? Didn't Mike Fair, like, what's his name? The guy who used to
Farrell rivals.
Yeah, he took a job with some college football team as their like director of recruiting.
Yeah.
So like
it's a nice pathway in there. I mean, look at I know warchant.com where I am at Florida State was. I mean, it's absolutely its own like ecosystem, and the money's pretty good. Justin, go ahead. I know you wanted to hop in.
They're making the money off these Black athletes, 100%.
Yeah, the guy like Michael Langston, who's like this reporter for Florida State, I know, that works for Rivals. His whole job, man, is to go around and like interview, like, "Hey, Jaquavius, so I know you had a good game last week in the high school game, and just want to talk to you about, where's Florida State standing in your finals, right? In your final three, now are you, just obviously suggesting, it's like that kind of be objective, but like, you're really being a fan, like you're recruiting for Florida State in an unofficial context because your job, you do better, you get more subscribers, the war chant as a recruiting analyst and this would be true at Georgia, this would be true at Ohio State, where you have the sports media ecosystem does better when the team's doing well. So it's going to behoove them to want to like see these guys sign with a Florida State over a Florida, over a Georgia, Florida State, we've been knocked down in recent years, so maybe over a UCF now, over another tier. But like, there's clearly a material like advantage, and like, Justin, maybe like we haven't talked baseball yet, but that's sort of your field. Go ahead, man.
No. I was just gonna say. I mean, I grew up in a completely different part of the country, played a completely different collegiate sport, but everything you guys are saying, it's the same. I mean, it's the same everywhere. Like that's so. I mean, it's just all really relatable. Like I could just replace names and papers. You know what I mean? Like, but the same sort of pipeline, the same sort of
And let's see. Anyways, absolutely, I got you, Mike. And then, but just to close up on this real quick, just in terms of how it relates to baseball, we talked a lot about college football. Maybe Justin, you could comment on like sports media in baseball. Maybe you talked last time, and I hope people go check out the recent episode that's up on YouTube now that I recorded with Justin, talking about class struggle in baseball in America and the centrality of baseball in the American experience. I mean, it's not an accident. It's called America's pastime, and that Jackie Robinson ended up going into baseball, even though that he
wasn't as best.
He's a better football player and basketball player.
He's a much better basketball player.
So just riff on that for a minute if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I mean it. The same sort of thing, and the racism over the people talking about, the black athletic body, just replace it with, Latin and Central American players. It's the same sort of thing. It's the same sort of media thing. It's the 5-tool players, it's the same conversations, it's built a little differently because the sport's different, but that same inherent, race element is definitely there. Overall, I mean, right now with the state of baseball media, I mean, I feel like although the sport has lost clout, and ranking, it's no longer, our number one sport. It's no longer like the number one watch sport, all of that. The power that those writers hold, and it's almost like they're less willing to relinquish that power because the sport has lost a little bit of relevance in American communities. But it's like the power they hold to absolutely just control who gets into the hall. Look at this last time. I mean, did you guys pay attention to, I mean,
it's unbelievable, man.
When's the last time it's just like, and nobody? And this time,
I'm glad. Let's talk about Curt Schilling not getting in. I think that is a victory for the people because, like, this one a few times. But why is
it right? I mean,
you look at Kurt Flood, and you look at you look at Dick Allen.
Yeah,
you look at guys like so many black players that have finally we see the Negro League records supposedly going to be counting as major league records, but the hall, it's like who gets in, who doesn't, like you said, is controlled by some private owner owned business. And sports writers with their own agendas.
Yeah. I mean, look at how the NFL, the NFL Hall of Fame, how different that would be if you just gave it to, 500 people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
500 people that hold grudges because they remember who talked to them and who didn't. They remember who gave them access, who didn't. They remember who had allegations, who didn't. But what allegations? Because again, we'll sweep some allegations under the rug. They're fine. Other allegations, that's the death sentence. Yeah. So, and as far as getting Curt Schilling right, I'm fine with Curt Schilling not being in. I'm fine with certain people getting in, or not getting in. But at the same time, a broken clock's right twice a day. It doesn't mean they're like nailing this.
No. Yeah, let's don't blow smoke up there for like not letting Curt Schilling in.
Yeah,
Curt Schilling, mind you, man, is getting. I mean, he's becoming like unhinged. I mean, like he has for a while. But I mean, Mike, I don't know. Did you see the kind of the stuff that he's been saying? It's wild.
I haven't followed his recent stuff. I remember him, being a big Bush supporter. Yeah, he used to be on Fox News a lot.
I mean, no, he was praising the Capitol storming.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
there was a huge controversy about he didn't receive enough like Hall of Fame votes, and
right. But now he's already
can't do that with a sympathizer of insurrection. I mean, probably not this year.
But honestly, they had already voted against him getting in even before that happened. The votes had already been counted, so it's like the dude is just like, I mean, it's awesome because now he's like firing back. And like Justin, can you summarize his response, man?
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's just, all right, I'm done. Like, remove me. Don't
take me off the ballot.
Like, I don't want to be on future ballots. I don't want to be like you guys have made.
I've been canceled.
Clear, so I'm out. Like, but it's perfect because he's canceling himself.
I love it. I love it, man. Let them cancel themselves.
Because he's probably one of those guys that would get in on that 10-year later last chance ballot.
Yeah.
Like he would, but like he's now saying I mean, he's not close to that yet, but he's now saying, never put me on this again. And then, 1 year after that 10th year would have happened, he can cry about how, well, I'm not in. And you're like, it's no different than Ricky Gervais being like, I'm canceled and I'm going to tell 17 million people watching me on my Netflix special. And you're like, it's not how cancellation works. You have
exactly. So no doubt. Mike, I think I want to bring you in on this, man, because just build on what Justin was saying. Like you have I think an astute analysis of this and influenced me in terms of like the way, there is, I don't know. I do feel torn sometimes, like just to frame it where like there is precedent to get set, and usually the way within this empire, the U.S. empire, that like any kind of like laws they enact, like type stuff that benefits, they're about taking people off Twitter. I mean, I just had the Capitol video that I recorded, that I live stream outside there, taken down off the YouTube channel. Said if I they have to make sure that people feel safe. So I guess like while I was there exposing and like having conversations with people and criticizing what was happening, like somehow, people that we can't let people see that, right? That's crazy. So it's like, I guess the hard part for me is that like, when I don't have obviously, man, like get these right wingers canceled. Like I don't have a problem with it, but it's like, then the argument is, I think, that opens the door for the left. But you would say though that they don't need an excuse for coming at the left. And like, what's your take on all this before we go on to the Lot J stuff I know you want to talk about?
No, that's something I think, I think sometimes people want to like look at the world as some type of, some pure universal exercise, and you just can't view stuff outside of the class struggle from that perception. And in essence, most media is already controlled by the right. I mean, it's controlled by, the ruling class, the top 1%. So in essence, it's their avenue that, we're on. I mean, I believe in the Democrat, nationalization of these institutions, but also, I mean, it so rarely happens when the state kind of uses his power to clamp down on far right elements that are actively, killing people. You know what I'm saying? And like organizing movements to kill people and organizing movements to take away your voice, to take away the voice from workers and, Black and brown people every day. So, I mean, I don't really care. Like Donald Trump's Twitter being taken down, I was happy as fuck with it because he used that every time he tweeted. I mean, think about what other nations. I mean, he would tweet like about Iran, and then all of a sudden Raytheon stock would just shoot up. You know what I'm saying? And of course, what happened with January 6th. So, in my opinion, I mean, when the state actually wants to repress fascists, or there's a movement by the working class to push the state to actually check fascists. I mean, in essence, think about there was a big push from the civil rights and the Black liberation movement for anti-lynching laws, for the Fed at the time to stop the Klan from, going ape shit all over the South and repressing people. Right. Radical Reconstruction. There was the newly freed Blacks were pushing the federal government to keep troops to put down the Confederacy. I mean, that's a history, Check
it out.
Would we say that, they shouldn't have pushed the federal government to use federal troops, because if they do that with protecting Black land, and they might do it with the other side. And the whole point is they were already doing it with the other side. Yeah. Left voices have already been censored. Left, commentators have already been purposely discredited by the mainstream bourgeois press. Mm-hmm. That's already happened. Like socialist groups are already getting kicked and censored and actively repressed by Department of Justice. So I don't, if it happened to us, it can happen to them. Right. Because it very rarely happens to them. And this moment in time, it won't even last that long. So
so these people aren't going to spend the same amount of time putting attention on every single left group to get censored. Like you could sit there and if you have shows every day, you could cover nothing else but that. Just have a show every day. All right, we're going to go over a list of like the latest like socialist groups, the latest Black liberation groups that have been, taken off Twitter, have been taken off YouTube, right? So it's like this obsessive focus on like, we got to be like consistent. I get it. I really do. I understand it. Like I think Ronnie Tyler, a great friend of mine, and does amazing work. Like feels passionately about this. I know I've talked with Matt Blumenthal a lot about this, and like it's something that we it's a tricky thing, because at the end of the day, like I tend to agree with Mike that like if you're a true revolutionary and you believe that capitalism is a system, oppresses people on a that class basis, but also a national oppression basis, and that like essentially that all you can really get are like improving the conditions, but under the power, you have to change the power structure of this country ultimately. And so you don't, there's no obligation to like be this neutral, like bourgeois objective journalist. Like we should be partisan on behalf of the working class. We should be partisan on behalf of like, oppressed people's struggles that are trying to like build power in their communities, to get community control of the police, to jail killer cops. And it brings in the whole like, prison abolition stuff too, and the contradictions with that, because, at the end of the day, like, I mean, prisons are oppressive systems. They benefit the ruling class, but at the same time, like, you're not going to like win over a lot of working class people that live in places where there is a lot of crime, telling them like, hey, we're just going to like move in like all these cats that have done this, and this, and we're going to try to build a community. And, if we just like nurture each other, like they'll, they won't, they won't commit any more crimes. It's like, I don't know, man. You lose some people at that. That's why I think it's community control of the police and control and is a much better like mantra to fight for than saying just prison abolition. Because where does it go? I don't know, Mike. Maybe you can react to that, and then Justin.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I agree. That's why the man is community control of the police. I mean, in essence, state power will not abolish itself. You have to have some type of power mechanism. You have to take power to abolish, bourgeois state power. Or, you have to smash bourgeois state power, but we have to create a power of our own to keep them at bay, because they don't just go away. Look at Venezuela, look at Cuba,
look at the Russian Revolution. You see behind Justin the famous picture there of the Soviets, freeing Berlin from the Nazis.
Yeah.
There. That picture, Mike. I don't know if you noticed it. That YouTube, even I think it was a year, Google, like, they basically said this was like, ooh, controversial imagery. Like, how could it be controversial that the Red Army deposing Nazi Germany in Berlin, right? Like, how is that controversial?
Oh, it's not controversial.
Yeah, because the photo's been doctored. That's the excuse.
Doctor, okay.
I know a lot about this photograph. It has to do with his wrists and the fact that Red Army soldiers wore compass, watch, two different devices, two different things, compass, watch, and the guy holding this. I mean, I don't know if I'm pointing at this correctly, but this guy has his watch on and the compass has been removed. And the reason the compass has been removed is because the U.S. ran headlines saying Red Army steals watches off of dead bodies. So the photographer took the compass off the other guy's arm so it didn't look like he had two watches. But just that small fact that this photo has been doctored, I mean, if you Google this photo, you'll find like 4 things like Vox, this photo's been doctored.
Of course, Vox would say that.
And it's just like, of course it was doctored because you used it as propaganda in an opposite direction. Like, it's like the fact that like,
we're talking about propaganda, and I don't know why it just reminded me of like the Uyghur shit with the NBA.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I forgot to mention that earlier. I mean, just to go back to the
we're gonna be here all night now.
Think about the city of Texas. I mean, Deshaun Watson, James Harden.
The city of Houston. Yeah.
The city of Houston, the state of Texas, the city of Houston. James Harden, he got out like. He got himself out, got big for 2 weeks, maybe, put on some weight and then lost it really fast.
He's balling up here where I am, man, now.
He is. But the thing is, apparently it was a rumor that him and Russell Westbrook wanted to leave because the owner of the Houston Rockets was a staunch Trump, supporter.
Yeah, no, that's facts.
That was the original one in the Houston Texans. I mean, so imagine being a sports fan in Houston.
Houston Astros too, like the shittiest,
Astros,
like sabermetrics, like corporate toxic culture of like everything bad you can imagine.
I'm only gonna say this once on the live stream. I'm glad we hacked him. All right, I'm done. Our baseball team hacked their baseball team a few years ago.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, awesome. and for y'all don't know, Justin's the diehard St. Louis Cardinals fan, but. Mike, I'm sorry, man. Go ahead.
Nah, the city of Houston is being fucking.
It's city of Houston's reactionary. Newsflash. All right. So, although there's a lot of cool people there in Houston, it's a big city. It's just like their leadership, the people that own that stuff, there, the industries, big oil money. Yeah.
Isn't the rep so like the city of Houston representationally wise? It is like pretty
diverse. It's really diverse,
like
super
Dallas.
diverse. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, but a
Still
lot
has
of
like a
big black and brown population, and
still has like that minority kind of white rule of sorts. You know what I'm saying? In which
yeah,
like the big group,
yeah,
right, 1% still runs.
yeah. I mean, Selma, Alabama is a good example of that. You know, in high school, I had a girlfriend for a little while, and I would go visit, and she was from Selma, and anyways, like you go there and it's like, it's 80% black, like 20% white, but you look at who owns the land still, and it goes back to like the Civil War, man, the betrayal of Reconstruction, and like these, neo-Confederates that were repatriated, right? And then were able to institute vicious Jim Crow system. And they had literally the public high school there, right? They have a black mayor in Selma, Alabama, and Selma's famous because of like the Pettus Bridge and the Selma Montgomery March. So it's I think a useful illustration, but it's also that the Black Panther logo came out of the county between Selma and Montgomery, Lowndes County, Alabama. It was the most active Klan county in the country. It's a 48-mile march, actually. It had a lot of publicity past year with John Lewis passing. But it's amazing. Literally they have segregation academies that popped up late 60s, early 70s, when they really had to desegregate. And I know in Jacksonville, Mike and I are my hometown. So my dad, for instance, graduated. Mike went to Andrew Jackson High School. Like my dad, and my brother, I used to coach at Robert E. Lee High School. Both of which, Andrew Jackson and Robert E. Lee, are pretty much mostly not all black, but almost closely. Jackson slightly more so, maybe it's a little few more. Got some of the Navy kids or whatever, but nonetheless, like they go to Lee. But there's still overwhelmingly black schools named for like Lee and Jackson. And it was my dad's. It wasn't until 1970 that Jacksonville, 1971, the fall of 71, when like busing became like mandatory. And they didn't, and it's why a lot of people make the good point that like the way desegregation was implemented, integration of schools was done in a way that really harmed a lot of black communities, but they just shut down the black schools, shut down the whole like ecosystem of like, it wasn't like, hey, we're going to like integrate in any kind of equitable way. We're just going to shut down your community schools. They haven't been funded the right way. And you get to go on a bus, like, to this other school now. And then, the whole kind of like ecosystem of black owned businesses and stuff like that, ended up taking a big hit too. So, yeah, it's wild, man. I mean, you look at like, we got off on a tangent there, but, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
What we do. No, I think we were talking about the censorship. Did I jump to Houston? And
then I jumped to Alabama and then Jacksonville. So
I guess I guess that thought came up with the whole censorship question. I mean, I think like it's definitely legitimate, like issue of big tech using its power in a unproportionate way. I just don't care about fascists,
Yeah.
So it's like, and like I don't think what happens to them, like I don't think it creates any type of. I think it comes from. I mean, the foundations of the United States as a country is like liberalism, classical liberalism, in which this idea that in a democracy, the voices will debate each other and the correct ideas will win.
Marketplace of ideas, right?
Marketplace of ideas, pure. That's what I said. Is pure universe that doesn't exist. What exists is the class struggle. What exists is certain institutions have power to enact power within that class struggle. Therefore, I just don't care about fascists getting accounts taken off.
Right. No, yeah. It doesn't, but I want to make a point though, before people criticize what Mike is saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure what you're saying is not that like you're out here like some of these liberals are that are writing op-eds being like, we need to deplatform, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, this is not the fight you're trying to like, this is not the fight for working class people. They're sitting around arguing over cancel culture and whether or not to deplatform these people or not. Like, for people that truly are like working, like, living paycheck to paycheck, or like now, stimulus check or unemployment check to unemployment check, and that haven't been part of, and that's been their class situation in this society. It's just materially like not something they're gonna be like freaked out about. Like it's something that it doesn't mean it's right, wrong necessarily, but it's like it's not like Mike or like people what he's saying are like out there leading the crusade to like be like some New Yorker article or the Atlantic, like we need to like censor these voices, like whatever.
Yeah.
Just to be like, no, I just don't really care. Like, so if they get shut down, I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna fight for the people that on the left when they get taken down, which is all the freaking time, right?
Yeah, So remember that intelligence report that came out about all of the how the Russians stole the election for Hillary, and it was an official intelligence report. And what did it name were some of these propaganda sources? Let's see, antiwar.com, Abby Martin's Breaking the Set. It was all left. I mean, that was what, 4 years ago? Little less than 4 years ago. There wasn't a single. There was like 17, like moderate left to far left websites, publications, and shows listed in an official intelligence report. There wasn't a single right wing or fascist. Like, nope, nothing. So you know what? This, like, we go through a little bit of this now because I think we all know what's going to happen. They're going to go back to not being shut the fuck up.
Right.
Like, so yeah. I mean, I guess forgive us if we bask in this a little bit. Like,
yeah, man.
You know what I mean? Like, just like you scream "shut the fuck up" when you see them on the screen anyway. So,
yo, Justin, chill.
Sorry.
I'm joking. I'm Trevor Lawrence here. I believe in both sidism. All right. You know, Mike, I gotta interject. Both sidism, man. You know, I support censorship, but I also support.
It just annoys me, man. Because I mean, and you know, I mean, especially with journalists. I mean, like, media is the platform, is the means in which they're able to do their job. You know, put the message out they're trying to do. So I definitely, you know, 100% when journalists are pissed off about it, I understand where that comes from. I guess from a practical sense, like, I don't believe anything they do to Trump. I mean, if they do it to me already, then fine. I'm prepared as an organizer, as if I'll be deplatformed off Facebook, Twitter anyway. You know what I mean? Like, the tool that I use as a part of a toolbox, but it's not the main one I use. I mean, but also it's one of those situations in which, you know, we're fighting for power to get to the point where we can, you know, nationalize big tech or do all this stuff. And what doesn't help us do that is Donald Trump before January 6th or afterwards, or during a period of like a transfer piece of power, tweeting for another insurrection, you know, and permitting that, you know, like, you know, that
right.
So it's kind of like a practical. It became like
absolutely.
To me, it's a practical question more than purely like an ideal one. However, I do understand the ideals, but I think the hypocrisy with liberals in regards to how they interact with the you know, like censorship and all that is pretty comical because they're always censoring the left voices. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
So,
well, let's talk about like Majority Report with Sam Cedar and like Emma Vigeland and all of them coming at Justin Jackson. And, you know, I don't know, Mike, I mean, could you like maybe real quick just like riff on, like, I mean, I've been really impressed with, like, you know, Justin Jackson and his political growth and maturation. I mean, he's like someone who's now, like, I think I made the point on By Any Means Necessary last week that, like, Justin Jackson is like not, it wasn't Jimmy Dore, it wasn't these other people that got AOC to respond on this force to vote thing. And regardless, like, whether you think like the force to vote things, like, you know, like was like whatever you think, it's not my point. My point is, I mean, I think we should be fighting to, like, you know, put demands on power all the time. But it was Justin Jackson, a running back, right, that gets AOC to respond, actually, you know, with her 12+ million followers. And I was just wondering, do you see the role he's playing maybe as like serving as like a template, a model that's going to, like, maybe other young athletes in high school now are seeing that, instead of just seeing that, because it's been a long time, we haven't had someone who is like good. Like, we have athletes that are good, a lot of them, but not like on the class questions like this too. And I was just wondering, like, how significant you see kind of his coming onto the scene is.
I think it's awesome.
Mike and then Justin. Yeah.
No, I think it's awesome. I think he's like giving a very radical left voice amongst the athletes. I mean, you remember when all the Colin Kaepernick stuff was originally happening? There was the Players Coalition that was formed, and then there was the different divides between the different kind of political tendencies. You know, Malcolm Jenkins and Quan Bowden, they were kind of the ones that just wanted to do like community programs. I mean, I remember they had a town hall in Philadelphia in which like protesters came and kind of shouted at them, and they actually listened to them, which is a good thing because they was having a some type of event with a cop, with the police commissioner about
Yeah.
listening to each other, and people came.
Listening.
People told them this is not cool, and they was like, okay. And so I mean, they're open to listen. I mean, of course, like I said earlier, with a lot of these players and the influence they're around, I mean, they're around very deeply liberal. Make sure you vote, start a nonprofit community center, and that's your way of giving back. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the model of social justice that the NFL wants. Kind of one that isn't really rooted in like struggle, but rooted in like service. You know, give some money to the poor, make your shoes kind of woke, I mean, stuff like that. Um, of course, you had a split. You had Michael Thomas, wide receiver for the Saints. I mean, a year and a half ago, he kind of disagreed with the mission and the direction of the Players Coalition. I think the Players Coalition kind of won out in the sense that it had all the backing of the NFL and probably of the NFLPA, the Players Association, backing it. So that's kind of won out. Justin Jackson is a great kind of left pole for all of that because he's a backup running back for the Los Angeles Chargers. Had a pretty productive good year. I mean, I think he's like a second, third year player. Has a bright future. I mean, I think his voice is very powerful. And I mean, he was able to get a lot of like Democratic politicians to like respond to stuff he's saying because of the platform that he's carrying. So he's able to use his platform as an NFL player to really push a radical left line. And he's somebody we're talking to. I mean, he's pretty lit, man. I would love to get him on the show one day. But I mean, I think he serves a great function in regards to like retweeting and talking about more, radical like ideas, especially when it comes to the class question, but also him being a African American, he can definitely articulate like the race question or the question of like racism and prejudice within the NFL. I think he's done a great job. I mean, this whole Medicare for all stuff has been fascinating to watch on social media. Whatever. I don't really care. Did you see the whole thing about interviewing a Boogaloo boy? I thought that whole debate was fascinating. I was watching that. Silly that was. But no, I mean, I think you have a new wave of like sports of athletes who are becoming a little bit more radical than the ones that came before them.
Which is awesome.
Let's not forget Colin Kaepernick when he first took a knee. I mean, I don't think folks really weren't vibing with that. I would say even my eyes, I was just like, what is he doing? Why is he doing that? It took him like a week because it's like he wasn't like at all political. I think I saw him getting more radicalized on his Instagram, but when he first did it, it was just a random action that he did. He was like, it was a propaganda of the deed type of solo dolo shit. I'm just gonna take a knee and all that, but it caught on because he started explaining it. I think what really sort of brought out support for him was the white backlash against it. And, the fact that people, I think Colin Kaepernick became more radicalized as he started participating in struggle, and that's when he started reading, more Fidel, Black Panther Party, socialism and stuff like that. That's when that happened. So Justin Jackson,
Yeah.
I think that's his path.
Mike is a novel concept, right? Mike, before I know you got to go, Justin, but like I know you got to go, but just it's a novel concept, right? The idea that like you learn from being in the movement as opposed to just being behind a Twitter, Twitterverse all day. And that's a lot of it's a tough time with COVID, but it's amazing. Colin Kaepernick learned through being part of a struggle and responding through that lived experience. That's powerful. Yeah, Justin, what's up?
Yeah, and I just to echo a lot of that, what Justin Jackson has been so refreshing. He's what I wanted Michael Bennett to be when that started to kind of become a movement, because Michael Bennett quickly kind of was like, well, he had a lot of great things to say, but he was so one topic focused, right? Which is great. I mean, it's better than having no topics. And there's a lot of athletes that have no topics. Michael Jordan had no topics he wanted to talk about. So I respect Michael Bennett for what he did, but like when that was all happening and his book came out, and that first book was awesome. But you just wanted more, right? Like I wanted that story to continue because I thought that story would have also then been that furthering of a radicalization of an athlete. And it just kind of went away. And it just kind of stopped, you know, but that's right when Justin Jackson kind of picked up. So yeah, and it's like that next wave. I mean, Michael Bennett's, nearly my age. So, you know, I get like there's a big discrepancy there. So Justin Jackson was that next wave of coming in. But I absolutely love to see it and love to see that he doesn't back down and love to see that, you know, I mean, if any of us think about if we had that platform, like how we would be, it's good to watch somebody use it. And he's using it, you know, I mean, as were so many people, you know, which is why, you know, Michael Jordan can be the most amazing athlete, but the most useless when it comes to helping other people, you know, because he had the biggest platform and, you know, of anybody and just didn't, you know, to see Justin Jackson and to know that, like, we don't know what this is going to do. What is he? He's 2022. He'll be out of team control.
Yeah.
Like, so what happened? No, I'm saying like 2022.
What happens when he becomes a free agent? Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
You know, and that's the thing is that he's willing to do this with his position now, which just kind of shows that, you know, shows that courage and that he's not going to back down on it because, yeah, he's still on a rookie deal. You know, I mean, he's going to have to go through this thing, you know, season after next.
Right.
Where now what?
Second contract time.
And, you know, and the fact that he's not changing, you know, you absolutely got to love it. I hope, you know, I've shot a couple of videos with one of my favorite NFL players of all time, not so political, but just favorite. But Marshawn is in his ear and telling him, you know, look, like let me turn this one contract deal into at least, you know, something that you have to work off of to where if you don't get signed again, you know, I just like bringing that up because a lot of people don't know that Marshawn's an actual like brilliant when it comes to at least the capitalist side of finance for athletes.
Yeah.
Like Marshawn actually knows what's up. So
absolutely.
I hope he's got Justin Jackson in his ear because we don't know what's going to happen. You know, he's pissing somebody off. Now it might not be the owner of the LA Chargers, but he's pissing people off.
Yeah.
So it's what happens, you know, I mean, he's under contract, you know, for another year and a half, but like what happens?
It's a different country. I mean, it's a different country in the sense that the masses have created different conditions for different ideologies to flourish. Like an athlete talking about Black Lives Matter and talking about, you know, he criticizes Republicans and Democrats. You know, he criticizes from a working class perspective.
Yeah.
So it's like, in essence, I mean, this would have happened 5 years ago. I think he would have got cut, you know, off the team, you know, like how politicized he is. But the fact that he has so much, in a way, he has cover from the people.
Movements.
His support. And that's all you need. You need cover from the people. They cover you. Now, like you said, when the contract expires, will he be able to get like an extension or something? I mean, and also already as a running back, he's already at a due to the, you know, fucking
longevity,
devaluation of the position. But I mean,
but also running backs don't last long in general. On top of the devaluation position, but
it's like, think about it. Let's say, for example, and I'm sure he wants to stay in the league a long time, but let's say he really is like only in it for like his first contract, and he's made, you know, let's say he's made and saved enough money and gets another opportunity. He has a platform. He can start a podcast and have thousands of listeners. He can have
and there's already people you see. Hey, let's do it, man. But like at the end of the day, it's like, and I'm excited with Justin being on board too, because once we get like, I mean, we got it, Justin. Sunday we're gonna do a session, but and get this OBS game down right, and make sure the live stream game is tightened up so that we can start, like, you know, really building this in a way that's like, you know, more professional. Like,
I hate that I can't A-OK anyway.
Right, it's all good, man. I know what you're trying to say, Mike. We got it. We're getting late, but I want to like, you can't A-OK anymore. It's just like, you know, Mike. Remember this? The NBA players used to hit a three before all the white supremacist co-option of that, and dudes would just be like that. I'm like, I hate these cats, man. they ruin shit like that,
You know what's funny is like there was once there was a black person who was doing his all right. So this has been multiple times. You remember? I don't know if y'all remember like the Ferguson Rebellion. They had a black captain that they would parade out there to form the community.
Yep.
And then they would tear gas everybody. And
Yeah.
he's a member of a black fraternity called Kappa Alpha Psi. So he was. They have a certain hand signal involving their hands. I don't want to actually do it. And there were people saying, "Why is the police captain throwing up gang signals?" And especially now with this whole 3% shit and all those fuckers, they
including the Patriots kicker.
People see black people doing that. People see black people doing that, and they're like, "Black white supremacists? What the hell?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, they definitely co-opted that shit, whatever that means. I don't know.
Whatever. Who gives? Yeah. Just stupid, man. It's like it's really ridiculous.
I know we're wrapping this up. I just want to say real quick.
Well, I don't know. We got a couple more things.
Okay, but still, at this point, I still want to acknowledge we've had some people hanging on with us this whole time. So
yeah, shout them out for us.
I just want to say, Captain Waffles and Joel and Neil, you guys are crushing the comments. So
hell yeah, man! We appreciate y'all. I got to get I'm on the Zoom here, and then I'm going back and forth. We got to get our game back up so that the link we actually put out is the one we're using, so I mean, it's just, that's on us, but nonetheless, I wanted to bring this up real quick. I got two more things we want to hit on tonight. All right. We mentioned, we hit on Dave Portnoy, and then that led into this whole larger discussion that kind of transcends sports on tech and cancel culture and all that. But this specific story about Saroya Tinker and the National Women's Hockey League is pretty amazing, because you're talking about a sport that needs all the media coverage it can get. Let's be honest. It's like women's hockey, already hockey, the NHL is like a distant fourth, in terms of by the way, Cardinals agree to acquire Nolan Arenado right now. Just broke. So there you go.
Hang on. I'm going to freak for just 1 second, because I tweeted this earlier today, and that is that because it's late January, that means
it's done. They just
that means we do this every year. We always try to acquire him every year. I get my hopes up, my heart breaks, and then I'm depressed until next January.
You got him now.
Shit. What did we give up? All right.
Cardinals got Arenado. Arenado's scheduled to make $35 million in 2021, part of a $260 million eight-year deal he signed with the Rockies. So he's in a
seriously. I'm a little.
I mean, wow, man, wow. Anyways, I don't think the details are in, but
it's my favorite ball player right now, and my favorite team coming together.
Wow, man. I mean, it's a big moment for you, man. So we kind of, Mike and I talked about basking a little bit when the Urban Meyer news and Trevor Lawrence. So
and if you know anything about Seattle sports, you know that I'm wearing this because it's Friday and it's Blue Friday. You just wear Seahawks gear if you're a Seahawks fan on Friday. So the one day I'm not wearing Cardinals gear instead.
Yeah, man.
We signed Nolan Arenado.
Maybe you got to rock that Seahawks hat, 1990s Seahawks hat. Dennis Erickson Seahawks. He left
these are
Miami.
the best colors.
Right? Yeah. I don't know, man. Lime green. The kids,
action green.
The kids like it these days. Green. All right. Even Michigan State's got that incorporated into their uniforms now. I've seen Oregon's had a huge influence, whether you like it or not. But hold on, man. While you're basking, while you're basking real quick, I've been trying to get to this hockey story for a minute.
I'm muting.
All right. No. It's me just as much, but it's nonetheless, to go back. So Saroya Tinker, they need coverage, but for her speaking out, that leads to the league having to back her, right? And it shows that making an unambiguous statement saying that we don't make much money at all. We need to build a league, and yet we don't want that. That's not who we want to be part of. This is an organization in Barstool that's I've talked about that victim complex stuff, and it's the idea that they will then complain that they're being canceled, that she should be put in jail and stuff for what she said. Portnoy's already been using this language this week because she's saying lies. I mean, that's why Mike pointed out about Deion Sanders and Willie Colon I mentioned too, former Steelers and Jets offensive lineman. It's a shame they're with Barstool because it does give some there's that kind of cover to be look, we got diversity, But Dave Portnoy, I don't know. I don't feel it all the way the same way about like, the Big Cat and PFT commentator. There's some stuff. I'll be honest. It's kind of entertaining, but nonetheless, it's just a disgusting. I wish they would leave that platform and try to like do something else if they were really, taking on Trump like they said they were, or whatever. But no, it's like if you're part of it, it is what it is. It's toxic, and they have harassed women. They have like gone after like journalists in ways that are just disgusting for the years now. All the while saying that they're the victims just for being called out, for people doing their job, like for like calling them. It's the most childish thing imaginable. And to talk like all this stuff about like, oh, everyone's so soft, and everyone gets their feelings hurt these days. And y'all the ones sitting here tripping like about anything that comes at you and talking about need to put people in jail that are your critics because they're lying. They're not lying. They're telling a truth that you don't see, jackass, because, and maybe you do and you just don't care. But Portnoy, fuck him. It's what it is. All right. So, shout out to People's Champ of the Week, Saroya Tinker. Definite solidarity to the National Women's Hockey League. They even got their league to have to come out and make a statement about how we don't support racist platforming and stuff. It was sort of vague. Could have been more supportive, but it also was, I think, significant. But it's just dope.
We'd be remiss if we didn't. We're bringing up, what is it? What's the WNBA like team in Atlanta?
Atlanta Dream.
Dream.
Kelly Loeffler. Yeah.
That was like, the WNBA for they've been kind of low-key way more woke about pushing for racial justice issues than even the NBA. And in essence, they've basically pressured the owner to have to sell the team.
That's literally what they did. And like you had Elizabeth Williams deserves a shout out, especially with the Atlanta Dream. They've had, there's a lot of players that did a lot of the heavy lifting, but nonetheless, it's like it's amazing. It shows that I think they've inspired a lot of NBA players, and I think like some of the biggest allies of the WNBA actually are NBA players, that support like the league, that's rise. Kobe Bryant, who just the anniversary of his passing was one of them. So Mike, let's close on. I know you wanted to talk about the developments in Jacksonville. Just like San Diego lost its team, right? Because they didn't. You might say what Jacksonville's doing now is similar, maybe. Except our stadium. The stadium in Jacksonville is definitely a lot better than San Diego's. But could you maybe just break down what this like Lot J deal is, the redevelopment plan, and how it ties into like what other NFL teams do in trying to develop these whole like shopping mall entertainment zones around their stadium?
Yeah, so essentially Lot J was a Jaguar ownership shotgun owner of the Jaguars, a billionaire. What was he, one of the top 20?
Yeah, from Illinois. He went to the University of Illinois and in Michigan.
Pakistan.
Yeah, but he's been sued by the state of Michigan and by people in Michigan for like terrible labor practices and environmental practices.
Well, he's been fighting the United Auto Workers Union for decades because
that's in Detroit. Yeah,
unionized flexing gate plants, but he's a pretty good anti-union. He's a pretty good union buster. He's a lot of the hustles for a lot of these NFL teams. Usually these NFL owners, they're like probably one of the richest people in the city. And they have a lot of power and control in regards to politics. Most of the time, these NFL stadiums are publicly financed by taxpayers, So think about a lot of public money is going to build a stadium that really the profits of that stadium doesn't go back to the city, doesn't go back to like parks and city services. It just goes to the bottom line of the NFL and the NFL owners. So, of course, Shad Khan tried to get, city council to approve a deal. Negotiated by Mayor Lenny Curry, who's a left-wing Trump-backed mayor here.
Lenny Curry.
Yeah, lazy Lenny. $250 million of taxpayer money going towards a Lot J development that they said would create jobs. In essence, maybe
tell them what specifically it is, right? Like the Lot J is a big parking lot with the big time.
Yeah, Lot J is a lot literally outside of the stadium called Lot J. It's a parking lot. They want to develop that parking lot to be, have like a sports have like a multimedia complex, dancing, club, shit like
shops,
that.
Clubs, old restaurants, hotels.
And this type of thing exists in a lot of franchises. If you look at a lot of stadiums,
New England,
Baltimore Ravens Stadium, their stadium, there's a lot of development of restaurants and stuff around there. Detroit, same
Yeah.
situation.
New England, man, the Foxborough thing is mind blowing, man. What Bob
Yeah,
Kraft has built up
Patriots
there,
Place,
Patriot thing. So,
Glendale,
yeah.
Arizona Cardinals and Glendale, they have a whole of it. So this is something that like these capitalists that own these NFL teams do everywhere. They use a lot of public money and use the threat of the team leaving, you know what I'm saying, to kind of leverage these cities and to like investing a lot of taxpayer dollars into these places. And of course, Jacksonville City Council rejected it barely. You know, it was a 12-7 vote. You needed 13 to pass. So it did not pass, but it kind of goes to the broader theme and how this was kind of used as like, oh, if you don't do this, we want to leave. The football team want to leave. And of course, what does that carry? You know, that carries, you know, people fearful of losing a national team, you know, that brings a lot of spotlight to a city, a lot of revenue and whatnot. But essentially, these NFL owners are able to leverage their power, having the most popular football team, you know, or having the most popular sports league in the country, leverage that to get more taxpayer money to redistribute that money from working class people to the 1%, you know, and this is done on the local level, the tax breaks that they get for the developments, you know, and in situations that you see, you know, like cities stand up, like the Oakland Raiders situation. Oakland is a very, you know, liberal city. You know, they didn't want to build a stadium with the type of financing situation that Raiders owner, was it Mark Davis, wanted. So of course, what did he do? He picked up his ball, moved the team to Las Vegas, where he got enough tax breaks and deals to build a state-of-the-art Death Star looking like stadium in Las Vegas.
You seen the torch, bro? You seen the torch? That weird flame thing? That's the most fashion. I'm sorry, I know. I apologize. I really do. But like, have you seen that? It's like that reminds me of like straight up Mussolini type shit, man.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't know Mark Davis's background. You know, maybe he likes to read about Italian politics. But let me look that up. Actually, the Raiders.
It's wild, man. Like Justin, look that up too. Tell me, do you think that's normal? The big flame, like just, and you look back at like the roots of that. It's always been some like fascist ritual type thing, man.
But then they said
the Olympics have been criticized.
Did they call it the Al Davis Memorial Touch?
Yeah, of course. Well, like, you know, give cover for Mark Davis's secret.
Didn't Al Davis have like a progressive type?
He did. No, he did actually. Al Davis was one of the first to like, you know, integrate. He was a coach actually. So in fairness, like he's like, you know, as far as owners go, he's like one of the least like detestable maybe of the ones that he.
Yeah, he was the first to hire.
The fact that
African American coach
Archell, and like he
Latino coach Tom Flores.
Yeah, exactly. And way before like that was happening, he and he got rid of Mike Shanahan's little punk ass. But you know, nonetheless, Al Davis always loved speed. We know that he always wanted the fastest wide receivers and all that. Darius Hayward Bay comes to mind, right? Darius Hayward Bay, they drafted over Crabtree. I remember. Yeah, that was wild. But
then Henry Ruggs. You know, the ghost of Al Davis lived. But like I was to finish up the original point, how you know, there's always something to be mindful of in regards to how these NFL teams operate. They're not just rich owners just making money off of like owning a team. They're trying to take taxpayer money and make money off of it. That's how they become richer. That's how they sustain themselves and have power. I mean, and it's in a different world of sorts. But think about all the developers that flourish off of these NFL teams being able to build more. Same situation you have in the college environment with these college booster programs, you know, these college boosters who have investments, I'm sure, in all these construction companies and these food service restaurants that are supposed to, you know, feed the kids. Think about in Columbus, Ohio, how the Ohio State University is the biggest thing in that city, and how in Tallahassee, Florida State University, they want that to be the center of this, you know, and how that's tied to educational policy, letting in more students, you know, every year at all these universities are the highest enrollment. Why? Because they can make more money off of letting more kids in. You know, the board of governors for a lot of these like statewide education systems are usually construction hacks and people that own development firms. So of course they're in favor of more capital building projects to make money So you have a educational industrial complex when it comes to college football. They're profiting off of them, student athletes, student athletes on the field through their free labor, but also when they're students too, letting more in. And that even, on a professional level, you see that with how these NFL owners make so much money off of these cities. It's kind of disgusting.
It's wild, man. Absolutely wild. I mean, just real quick before Justin, you hop in, I just want to say, like, what Mike in Jacksonville, the Lot J thing, also, it got shut down. There was a lot of community pressure. I think that, like, it would have been different maybe, like, if it weren't COVID times in terms of, like, being able to mobilize more people. But I think the message got clear. It was like they had to get a super majority, I think, and they weren't able to get it by one vote. But it may move on. I wanted to ask you, what are the prospects of what it means for Jacksonville? I mean, we've seen that team, the Jaguars, have played in London, and the NFL had this fascination with London. It only got cut off by COVID last year. There were going to be 2 home Jacksonville games in London, and they were looking to do that with more and more teams. So, like, what is it? Is this Shipyards project they're talking about now? Like, does it have any legs? I mean, what's the next step?
I think it's a shipyard, and eventually the stadium's going to have to be renovated, or they had to build a new stadium.
But how does Kansas City get away with, like, having an old ass stadium like Arrowhead then without getting trouble?
Sure, they put a lot of money into it, but also, they just had, usually when it's a tie to it. When your franchise is more successful on the field, you make more money and you have more security, quote unquote. And it's not like Jacksonville city government isn't exactly like a progressive, stalwart protector of taxpayer dollars. So I'm sure there'll be an opportunity. But it's funny enough, the people that rejected this Lot J deal, it was also a lot of the people who you would consider Trump supporters.
Yeah.
Part of the elite getting our money and stuff like that.
This Pakistani billionaire from the outside coming in here trying to steal our jobs, man.
Yeah.
Like
if it was Wayne Weaver, they would have probably gave it to him, I'm sure.
Well, Wayne Weaver was like a good old boy from, like, Columbus, Georgia, man, who owned 9 West shoes. That's how he got his money to buy an NFL team. So, 9 West.
Save the kids.
Yeah, you want to sponsor us, 9 West, just know that we're not going to compromise what we say. Right. No, I saw Katie Halper actually promoing PetSmart, man, on Rolling Stone with Matt Taibbi.
Wayne Weaver, he had like 2 kids, I believe, and his son or something did not want to fucking own a football team. I'm like, what type of shit is that, man?
You're a ruling class billionaire. Like, well, the one thing you got to do is your son, like,
you gotta find yourself.
Where's his class solidarity, man?
He wanted to find himself.
He wanted to find himself. What a loser, man. He wants to, like, not be part of dominating the world, man. Be part of the oligarchy.
He said he wanted to be a painter. I'm just joking, but, like, come on, man.
What a beta, man. Since we're talking about Portnoy tonight, right? I'll never forget all the crazy Washington State, like, just straight up fascist, like, militia types coming at me one morning when I was calling out that dude. Who was it? Like, he's whatever, Tho Bishop or whatever. It was up there, like, somehow went from being in Tallahassee, Florida, like libertarian dude, to repping and running a campaign for a guy that was in the Charlottesville Tiki Torch March. And I was going off on him, like, he's like Washington State, like, straight up, like, they're like, we're not white supremacists. I'm like, damn, that's a lot of energy to, like, have to, like,
man,
it's funny how they are so obviously white supremacists, but they get mad as fuck when you call them racist or white supremacists. Some of them will be like, I almost respect the one straight up. They'll just be like, yeah, I'm racist, but, like, I don't respect them literally, but at least they're not these, like, little punk asses that are, like, sitting here saying, like, I'm not racist. I like good black people, like, man, shut up, man. Get out of here with that mess.
That state rep that they have out of Spokane is easily, like, the most openly, like, fash representative, but he's on the state level. So it's like, less people pay attention. But that guy, they did an armed march in Oregon on their capital years ago. And that dude was, like, key in leading that. And it's like, that didn't get much. Like,
man, that Pacific Northwest, maybe if you've lived up there, there's a lot of, like, militia far right bite types up there.
Yeah, right? Well, that's why that rep, I'm blanking on his name right now.
Who cares, man? I'll get
he's a state Washington rep, but that's why he proposed naming and splitting the state. Because, like, here's the deal. Like everybody in Washington, they all blame those liberals in Seattle, right? Because it's that one city that like votes for them in all the rural areas. But which is like, funny because like that's every state.
It's like Chicago with Illinois.
Yeah, it's every state.
Illinois with Chicago.
Like,
but especially I think is interesting. I mean, it's a broader conversation about geopolitics, but I always looked at the West with the Wild West is like, this is territory that is more newly settled than, let's say, some of
East,
you know what I mean? So it's like, I think you have you have like in Oregon, you have these liberal bastion type cities, conclaves that run the politics of the whole state because most of the population lives there. But outside of it, it's pure like rural kind of Trump like kind of right-wing territory in essence. And I think, it was told to me, I agree with it for sure. A lot of the coverage of like on Fox News of, talking about how horrible Seattle is and how horrible Portland is.
It's so neoliberal and normie though. That's what's so funny.
It is to create, but I think it legitimately is to create a narrative to, in the capitalist sense of the word, stop investment in those cities. So that the rural areas can take over and those can become like traditional Republican states. Because fuck, man, it's so like it's interesting, man. Like I have friends who live in Oregon. It's like, you see about all that, like, oh, you can smoke weed and all that shit. That's just lit. Progressive policies, paid leave, all that shit. But damn, if you pass a climate change carbon tax, you got like neo-Nazis and militias outside your capital.
Like,
it's almost like you're in Florida, you know what I'm saying? Like,
it's worse in some ways, and in other ways it's not as worse. It's like there's different levels to it. But like the whole white nationalist thing out there and the militia types, because they're not even, it's not like in the South, where like a lot of these little kids that join like these groups in like, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, they grew up and like black kids maybe like took, or maybe not nice to them at school or something. They felt like, what's some weird crap, and they're like, I don't like black people now. They like, they misbehave in my class at school and I'm like a traditionalist or something. And these alienated little dweebs, that like are on here and they get tied into this. A lot of those people out in the Northwest, they've never even been around like anyone who's not white.
No, it is when I first moved to Seattle in 2006 and I was coming from Michigan. So Michigan has, Flint, Saginaw, Bay City, Detroit. They have actual like multiple, more than one, more than 5 black majority cities.
Yeah.
So a neighborhood is a neighborhood. And when I first moved to Seattle, people were like, oh man, like the Central District, the CD, which I hate that it's CD. Anyway, I just like that whole shit drives me crazy. But anyway, they're like, oh, no, the CD, like that's like the shady area. But that's just called a neighborhood. That's just a mixed integrated neighborhood. But in Seattle, they're like, that's.
If it's not some gentrified fake ass little corporately developed plan thing, it's like it's shady, man, right?
It's because you're absolutely right. They don't know about integration in that way. They know about integration with other communities, but when it comes to the African American community, they have no establishment.
Isn't in like Seattle, I guess in Washington, the second biggest minority population is Asian.
Yep. It's like 26%.
I have a former roommate. He lives in Cameron Russell. I don't think he watches this, but shout out to him. He lives in Seattle. Cool guy.
And like I said, and it's centralized. That 4 to 6% African American really is corralled into an area. It is not. That is not spread out.
Right.
And it's wild, especially like I said, coming from Michigan, because the neighborhood that Seattleites won't walk in is every neighborhood I had a friend in Lansing who lived in. You know what I mean? Like no matter what that friend's background was, it didn't matter.
So it's hometown of Magic Johnson.
It was wild, but
so Mike, my bad. Mike, what were you trying to say?
No, I think y'all made the point perfectly well.
I think that maybe is our cue let everybody kind of wrap up. I think we've had a good convo and just kind of set the stage for some stuff that, you know, will be recurring. I mean, we didn't really get on the Michigan stuff as much, but honestly, University of Michigan sports are going to be down for 2 weeks. It's led to some, you know, exposure to a coronavirus strain that is new. They played a game. They played a game against Purdue. Yeah, it's okay. And like the whole athletic department, it's the thing in Michigan. So it's like the entire athletic department is shut down. And it's also combined too with Gretchen Whitmer facing, as I talked today on By Any Means Necessary, lots of opposition now from within the state, from parent groups, you know, like high school parents. And to some level, I sympathize with some of them, not like the Trump or like, you're just like, we're just irrational open it uppers. But I mean, this thing keeps dragging on, man. It's like people can tolerate lockdowns, fighting COVID. I mean, we, you know, I think most people like understand it. They're not like the stormers, the Capitol types, the anti-vaxxers, whatever. That like, you know, but when it just rolls on and you had a government just fail like so miserably in how they do this, and they try to deflect what their failure on the China that's actually back to normal and living life and it's not genociding, you know, people. And the U.S. is finally, you know, whatever. Maybe this video is gonna get taken down because I'm a genocide denier now. But like that is State Department propaganda right there, straight up. Call me a conspiracy theorist all you want. Put a fact check thing there. The you know, the PRC has actually done a lot to develop the area out there.
We all have prisons.
Yeah, the U.S. like, why don't we also take satellite footage of drones of like prisons in Alabama with like in Louisiana with like black males everywhere and be like, oh, you're Russia's warehousing and genociding black males. I mean, honestly, that's a lot more true than what they're saying about what's going on in Western China. So, you know, it's a mind altering, mind bending type stuff, man. So you got to like keep your sanity with you, try to keep your mental health, man, because they'll try to gaslight you, and that's just a fact. And you'll feel like you're going crazy sometimes, but reality is just try to like, you know, keep looking at the world like clear headed, and also realize, man, that like Mike said, that we don't have an obligation to sit here and like, you know, play this line that we need to be objective and fair to all involved. And we make it clear that like, you know, we subjectively like look at sport and the way we analyze it and the way we look at other things in politics is through a class struggle lens. And like, is it something that's objectively going to resonate and help advance the conditions for empowering the working class, or is it not going to? And, you know, call that reductionist, whatever you want. But at the end of the day, all these problems we have of interventions abroad, of police brutality, of, you know, genocide of like the ongoing genocide of indigenous people still, which is like taught. It's crazy how it's taught as sort of like something that happened in the distant past, is a product of neoliberal capitalism and the idea of keeping all these countries as captive markets and under U.S. sphere of influence. So it's like that is the primary contradiction. Does that mean I hate where I'm from? Does that mean I don't love the people I grew up around? There's things like, I think sports is some of, you know, a lot of ways in the best of American culture in some ways. And there's but there is a lot of interest, you know, places like New York City, other big cities. There is interesting culture. It's not, but it's just, you can't make there's nothing ambiguous about the U.S. empire. It is what it is. It's like, it is the source of why Palestinians will never know freedom unless we focus on the primary contradiction. Why Venezuelans and Iranians, it's like, we'll never. So it's like, we got to keep our focus, I feel like, on eyes on the prize. And, you know, if you're not with the anti-imperialist line, then you're going to be leading astray. So I don't know. I think we're going to peace out now, Mike. I appreciate it, man. And Justin, I really appreciate you. All right. And everybody that was on the stream tonight, appreciate y'all. Yeah. I mean, I know we peaked a little bit up in the upper teens and been dwindling. People are like, you know, probably like, you know, go home or something. We already are home. But with that, peace. Until next time. We're out.
Nolan Arenado's a cardinal. That happened. Sorry.
I'm going to cut you off. Peace.